Why don't we just ask if category management has even got a future? Nice small topic to start before dinner. And I can't think of anyone better to do it. And I would be delighted to welcome Dr. Elouise Epstein of Kearney to come and provoke the thought. The floor is yours.
Thank you. By the way, Richard, I actually have walked into a meeting room like this, and it took me about 15 minutes to figure out I was in the wrong place. So it was investment bankers, so it was a little close. But I have a new book coming out in October 11th specifically. And, oh, by the way, can we put my slides up? And it's hard to write a book, but it's even harder to know when to stop. Since I finished my manuscript, FTX has imploded, Silicon Valley Bank cratered, the city of Oakland, where I reside, has been hit with a massive ransomware attack and has brought all city operations almost to a standstill. And of course, ChatGPT and generative AI have been going bananas. And so tonight, I'm going to talk about nuclear war, AI, and category management. And I know that's a big arc, but stick with me. We'll have some fun. All right. There are 12,700 nuclear weapons in the world today, approximately, spread out across 9 countries. So that means 9, 10, maybe 20 people have their finger on the proverbial button. That means they can unleash global destruction. That's a pretty terrifying idea. But at least it's humans with their finger on the button. Can you imagine if a machine or an artificial intelligence had control of our nuclear weapons? Well, for those of you that have seen Dr. Strangelove, and given the audience, I'm guessing that a lot of you haven't seen it. This came out in 1964 at the height of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. And this movie is a satire, it's dark humor. Peter Sellers stars in it, and he plays multiple characters. He's very funny if you're into this kind of genre. And the whole premise is that a rogue general in the United States has unleashed nuclear weapons on the Soviet Union. And the political leaders on both sides are trying to figure out what to do with it. And so they're going to try and contain it, but only to find out that Dr. Strangelove has created a doomsday machine. And in the event of a nuclear attack, once the bombs drop, it will automatically fire all of the nuclear weapons back at the United States. It was pretty dark and macabre for 1964, but it was, of course, satire. If you haven't seen the movie, I recommend watching it. It's pretty fun. Now, that's pretty funny in a kind of dark kind of way, and would be if in the early 1980s, the Soviet Union actually deployed a doomsday system. Literally. They called it the dead hand system. Try to step over here. And so what would happen is if it detected an attack, so they set up sensors all over the world, and if it detected an attack, it would alert the leadership, but if the leadership didn't take action, and it detected that if they didn't take action, it would fire all of the Soviet missiles back at the United States. That's a little terrifying. And so those of you that deal with technology on a day-to-day basis, whether it's your phone, your laptop, whatever, you know that periodically you have to reboot your machines. Technology is buggy. Well, can you imagine what 1980 sensors would look like, or computers for that matter? So you can probably see where this is going. So in September of 1983, this is a Soviet radar detection facility. I'm not even going to try and butcher the name. As an American, we're terrible at pronunciation. But essentially, this is a radar warning station. It's set up to monitor for inbound launches. And on one night, a fellow by the name of Stanislav Petrov was the commanding officer on duty. And in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, all the screens went red and all the sirens started blaring saying the Americans have launched nuclear missiles on the Soviet Union. So he's got a couple hundred men underneath him looking at him to make a decision. Do we alert the leadership? What do we do? And if he does nothing, there's the potential that the dead hand system will kick in. And so Petrov is credited as the man who saved the world because he actually intervened and concluded that this was probably a faulty sensor. And since we're all here today, that's what it was. That's pretty good evidence that that's what it was. But he had 7 minutes to make this decision. And upon his reflections years later, he said it was a 50-50 chance. 50-50 chance that he would have sent the order on to escalate the nuclear posture of the Soviet Union, which could have, in kind, brought a likewise escalation and led us into nuclear war accidentally. So tonight, at dinner, or if you're at the bar later, I encourage you to raise a toast to Petrov, just to thank him for saving the world. But this gets at the role of humans and AI in the systems we design. And oh, by the way, the sensors and data collectors, what data are we collecting and how good is it? And those of you that think that we're away from, that have bad data and think we're going to get out of that problem, it's only going to get worse. So let's talk about AI now. When I say AI, what comes to mind? I'm guessing it's something like this. The Terminator, The Matrix, 2001 Space Odyssey, Star Wars, on and on and on. Hollywood has done a great job, just like with Dr. Strangelove, of imagining what a future could be. By the way, Hollywood was right about the doomsday machine, so I'll let you figure out where this will go. But this is what's in our imaginations. When we say AI, somewhere back in our brain, we are calling up some version of this because in popular culture has embedded itself in our brains. But the reality is AI in our context today is a lot more pedestrian. So what is AI? There's a lot of definitions out there. This is my definition. It's teaching a machine to think, to imitate, to learn, to make decisions, take actions like a human would. That's what it is. Now we can debate all kinds of cascades of what AI is, what it includes, what it doesn't include. We'll have a panel afterwards. But essentially, we're just teaching a machine to do things that a human can or cannot do in some cases, and asking it to do, we're offloading that task to the AI. It's that simple. No matter, forget Terminator, forget the Matrix, it's this simple. So to learn AI, I would argue that we need to develop what I would refer to as algorithmic literacy. Each and every one of us needs to understand algorithms much, much better than we do today. So for me, I have 3 friends who are algorithms. Now I know that sounds a little bit weird and perhaps a tiny bit sad, but I communicate with these 3 algorithms on a daily basis. In fact, they make up a large portion of my day. Let me explain. I rely on the YouTube algorithm to teach me, to tell me everything I need to know about business, about AI, about ESG, on and on and on. And I don't search. I wait for it to bring me the video. I rely on it to bring me the videos that it thinks I need to see to stay on top of the topics that are of relevance to me. My next friend is the LinkedIn algorithm. I rely on this to put my content into other people's feeds, or perhaps your feeds, because I'm a content creator and it's important for me to put my content where it needs to go. And so I spend a lot of time talking to this algorithm. And then, of course, I talk to the Facebook algorithm. Now, it's not a two-way conversation, at least I don't think it is. But what I'm doing is looking to understand how it changes. So I'm Jewish. So if I had a Jewish friend, guess what? All of the suggested friend recommendations are, you guessed it, Jewish. If I click on an ad for a vegan product, guess what I start to see over and over in my feed? Vegan products, on and on and on. And so every day it's like a treasure hunt to see what this algorithm brings back. And so I would encourage all of you to look at the algorithms in our lives, whether they're on your phone, whether they're on social media, whether they're on Amazon, any other site you use, because increasingly our lives are being driven by algorithms. And so to develop your algorithmic literacy, you can ask 3 questions. What's the algorithm's motivation? Social media algorithms want to keep you on the site over and over because the longer you stay, the more money the platforms make. Amazon wants you to buy more and more and more. So what is the motivation of the algorithm? What's the algorithm's bias? Algorithms are nothing but a mathematical equation until you feed them data. So if you have bad data, guess what? You're going to have to fix the bad data problem, or else you're going to put bias into your algorithm. Or if you have incomplete data. So if we're only looking, and this is particularly relevant in risk and ESG, if you're only looking at this part of the problem, guess what? You have a whole other part of the problem that's not even being considered. So it's your job to understand what's the bias. And then, of course, how do you validate the output? Case in point, I thought I was plunking around with ChatGPT, and I asked it to fact check a stat that I have in my new book. And I said, what was the the amount of visual media on the internet in 2022? Because I had a statistic that it's 82%. And it came back with the same statistic as 82%. But the problem with that is my statistic and the statistic it brought back was actually created in 2017 by Cisco as a projection of internet traffic, not actual internet traffic. So if I didn't stop and actually assess and think through what the source of that data was, I could have just gone through without actually, or I could have put in a wrong statistic or used that erroneously. So I would encourage each of you to develop or pay closer attention to how algorithms change our lives. All right, so we've done nuclear war, we've done AI, now we're going to move on to category management. So procurement is having another moment. We've had 3 moments in the last few years. 2016, we had the Amazon moment, where all of a sudden everybody realized, hey, wait a minute, why is corporate procurement nothing like Amazon? And we've spent probably 7 years trying to answer that question, and I don't think we've solved it yet. So that one's still out there. 2020, we had the pandemic moment. Where is my stuff? Where is my PPE? How can I get this from here to there? So we spent a lot of time answering that question, and I think we did a pretty good job. And in 2023, we have the AI moment. This is the moment that AI is actually upon us. And I keep hearing just ChatGPT it, which is a proxy for all generative AI and the broader AI. And so we have to so I'd like to explain how category management's going to be changed by this AI moment. So I am a historian, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit of history of category management. And my thesis is category management is dead. Now that's an unpopular opinion, but stick with me on this one as well, because I think you can see where if you look at the origins and where we're going, then I think you can see that the way it's been is not the way it's going to be. At least I hope so. By the way, not all of my colleagues agree with my assessment that category management's dead. So it's a fierce topic of debate within Kearney. But when I started, well, I started in 2000, but in the early days of my career at Kearney, we used to have teams around the world that collected category strategies and information, printed it, put it in binders, and sent it around the world. Then we put it on CDs and DVDs, and that was pretty exciting. From there, we put it in SharePoint, where all that knowledge sat collecting virtual dust. And then we created some dashboards, and everybody thought that was pretty exciting until we realized that the dashboards weren't telling us anything, and they weren't driving the strategy. And then Certo comes along. And so with a click of the button, an entire category strategy can be created. We can ask some questions, there's some back and forth, and I'm oversimplifying a really complicated tool. But the point is we know at a click of the button, I can have that information. And I can start new strategies, I can reset strategies, it's all right there, it's centralized, it's easy to use. This is not a commercial for Certo. It's just, that when you see that, and you have this legacy, I mean, Kearney used to set up massive category management organizations to use SharePoint or to print this stuff out. And so now we have gone from what's taken days, weeks, months to minutes, less than a minute. And so, well, Drasko, perhaps you killed category management. I'm kidding. But what has happened is it's much faster now. The timeline, we don't need as many people doing this. And when I interview and study, part of my job is researching how we use digital tools and how it changes the organizations. One of the big areas now is we don't have to have dedicated category managers. And so when we add ChatGPT and generative AI and the ability to create context and to synthesize information and bring this together with the already powerful tool that we have now, then that is going to fundamentally change, because we could change, we'd have the ability to evaluate strategies in real time. Doesn't mean we'll change them, but we have access to enable this and change this and really react to the market as it's happening. So in less than 15 years, we've gone from paper to what is imminently ChatGPT or generative AI. That's a staggering set of innovations. So however long it takes you to adopt tools, that, you know, any of these tools that are impacted by ChatGPT, and it's not just category management, sourcing's changing, market intelligence is changing, risk, et cetera, et cetera. This is happening really fast. So my final thoughts are, you need to get ahead of this. You need to develop AI skills. However, we live in a physical world, and business runs on relationships. So for every AI skill you develop, work on an equal amount on relationship management. Because for the foreseeable future, we will still be conducting relationships, and no matter how much AI enables that relationship development, no matter how much information we have, it all comes back to our human connectivity. And so every time you log into LinkedIn or read news and you see all the hype around AI, just remember right now it's hype. We are at the peak, or maybe not even at the peak of the hype cycle. And just take a step back and remember that this is all about the human experience. And so as you leave today, as you leave tomorrow, or as you leave the room today, as you leave tomorrow, I want to encourage you to embrace your humanity. take a hike, give somebody a hug, consensually, watch the sunset, or simply lay back on a clear night, stare up into the vastness of the universe, and contemplate our existence. Because the human experience is beautiful, flawed though it is sometimes, but feelings are what makes us human. Thank you.